She was 19, a nanny, alone in a stranger's house. The man she fell for was married. The woman who hired her had no idea. But when the truth came out, someone ended up dead. And the body? Found in pieces, burned, buried, and forgotten. Her name was Keira Johnson, fresh out of high school, wide-eyed, quiet, and eager to leave behind the small Alabama town she came from. When she landed a job with the Sanders family in suburban Georgia, she thought she was stepping into a better life. A stable job, nice neighborhood, and a couple who seemed to have it all, Tyrone and Vanessa Sanders. Tyrone was a respected church deacon, a local business owner. Vanessa worked as a nurse, often pulling long night shifts. It all looked perfect. But behind the walls of that beautiful brick house, secrets festered. And Keira? She wasn't just the nanny anymore. She became something else. Something dangerous. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. What happened in that house between a teenage nanny and a married man that ended in gruesome murder? And the most shocking part, who helped cover it all up? The neighborhood was quiet. Suburban Georgia, just 20 minutes outside of Macon. A cul-de-sac lined with identical brick houses and trimmed hedges, where everyone knew everyone else. At least they thought they did. Behind the front doors were families living ordinary lives, or so it appeared. That's where Keira Johnson arrived, barely 19, with a second-hand suitcase and a handwritten resume. She didn't know a soul in the state. No friends, no family. Just the hope that this new job would offer stability, a fresh start. Tyrone Sanders was a name people respected, business owner, church deacon, the kind of man who prayed before dinner, who shook your hand firmly and looked you in the eye. His wife, Vanessa, worked long overnight shifts as a nurse at a local trauma center. They had 2 young children, and on the surface, a happy home. They hired Keira as their live-in nanny. She was meant to help with homework, fix snacks, fold laundry. But in time, the lines blurred. She wasn't just helping. She was staying up late, talking with Tyrone, confiding in him. The way she started looking at him changed, and the way he looked at her, that changed too. So why did Keira take the job in the first place? What really happened in the long, empty nights when Vanessa was gone and Tyrone was the only adult left in the house? How did an innocent job turn into an affair? Was Keira in love? Was she manipulated? Or was it something more calculated? And when everything came crashing down, who lost control first? Who picked up the weapon? And why did someone have to die? Keira wasn't just running from a small town. She was running from a mistake. Back in Fort Payne, Alabama, people talked. Her mother had a revolving door of boyfriends, and her stepfather was the kind of man who made Keira feel uncomfortable when no one else was around. She never said anything. She just packed up and left the moment she turned 18. School had already been out of the picture for months. She dropped out halfway through her senior year, not because she couldn't handle the work, but because the chaos at home had gotten too loud, too violent, too unsafe. By the time she landed in Georgia, Keira had been sleeping in her car for over a week. She showered at gas stations, ate from vending machines. She kept a journal in the glove compartment, pages filled with shaky handwriting, prayers, and promises to herself. That's when she found the flyer. A small church off Route 41 had a bulletin board full of job postings. One caught her eye. Live-in nanny needed. Experience preferred. Faith-based home. There was a number. She called it. Vanessa Sanders answered. They met the next day in the fellowship hall of the church. Vanessa brought juice boxes for her kids and wore her scrubs. She was between shifts and looked exhausted. Keira came dressed in her only clean clothes, a too-big cardigan and wrinkled jeans. She was soft-spoken, polite, said ma'am more than once. Vanessa liked that. She saw someone who needed a hand and decided to extend one. Tyrone didn't attend that meeting, but Keira met him the day she moved in. He came out of the garage with a firm handshake, a wide smile, and called her Ms. Keira, like she was family. He was warm, welcoming. But something in his eyes lingered. It was subtle, but it was there. A glance held a second too long, a laugh that felt a little too personal. The Sanders home was beautiful, but it didn't feel lived in. There were no toys on the floor, no clutter. The kids were quiet, well-behaved, maybe too well-behaved. Vanessa was rarely home before midnight, always working extra shifts. Tyrone ran his own contracting business, which meant he was in and out all day. Some afternoons, Keira and Tyrone would be the only two adults in the house, and when he started eating lunch at home instead of at his job sites, she noticed. When he asked about her journal, she hesitated. When he brought her a book about healing through scripture and said she could talk to him about anything, she listened. The diary entries changed. She wrote about his voice, the way he made her feel seen. She wrote about guilt, about wanting to be good. But the entries were also laced with confusion. One day she wrote, "He said God brings people into our lives for a reason. I hope he means that." Another entry read, "I saw her lipstick on his collar and I didn't feel jealous. I felt sorry for her." Little things started piling up. Tyrone began complimenting her more openly, telling her she was mature for her age, that she had an old soul. Once he touched her shoulder when passing behind her in the kitchen, and his hand stayed just a little too long. Another time she found herself crying in the laundry room, overwhelmed and unsure why. Vanessa didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she didn't want to. She praised Keira constantly, said she was the best thing to happen to the household in years. But there were signs. The way Tyrone stopped holding Vanessa's hand at church, the way he looked at Keira during family dinners, and the way Keira stopped looking in the mirror. Keira began locking her journal away, hiding it in the vent behind her bed. But even locked doors couldn't keep out what was building. The danger was there, woven into the silence of that house. It showed itself in glances, in questions unasked, in the weight of words left hanging in the air. And through it all, Keira kept telling herself one thing: you needed this job. You needed this fresh start. But sometimes, fresh starts come at a price no one expects to pay. It started with a ride home from work, then a drink in the basement, then everything changed. Keira Johnson had been living in the Sanders guest house for almost 4 months when it began. Tyrone Sanders, always the gentleman, started staying up late after the kids went to bed. At first it was innocent. He'd find her folding laundry and ask if she wanted to sit for a minute. He'd pour a glass of tea, sometimes wine, and talk about stress, about life, about faith. She listened. She always listened. And slowly the boundaries faded. He complimented her mind before her looks, told her she was smart, said she was wise beyond her years. One night he mentioned how hard it must have been for her growing up. Another night he said she deserved better. Better than what the world had given her. Better than how people treated her. Keira didn't know what to make of it. It felt kind, but it also felt heavy. Like he knew exactly which wounds to touch and exactly how long to press on them. She began confiding in him. At first, it was about small things. Her mom's drinking. Her fear of being alone in the world. Then it became more personal. More vulnerable. She told him she never felt protected as a girl. That sometimes she wished she could forget everything before this job. Tyrone would nod slowly and say things like, "That's why God brought you here. This house, this family. This is your second chance." But what he called guidance, others might have called grooming. He'd start each conversation with scripture and end it with a compliment. He told her he saw her heart, that she was pure, that she was different. And on one humid summer night, after another long conversation in the basement while Vanessa was working a double shift, he kissed her. She didn't stop him. Keira was confused. She wasn't naive, but she wasn't prepared either. Part of her felt seen in a way no one had ever made her feel. Another part, the part she buried, felt the weight of guilt. She had come into that house to help, to heal, not to hurt. But the line between right and wrong had become blurry. The feelings? Complicated. She started wearing lip gloss. She started staying up later. Her diary filled with conflicted entries. If he really loves me, why am I hiding? And then, he said I don't have to feel guilty. He said love finds us when it's supposed to. But secrets never stay secrets forever. Vanessa began noticing things. Tyrone's late-night absences, his sudden protectiveness over Keira, lipstick on his collar that didn't match her shade. Keira started avoiding eye contact during family dinners. She stopped attending church on Sundays. She claimed she was tired, sick, overwhelmed. Vanessa tried to shake it off, told herself she was imagining things. But the tension in the house was real. The warmth had turned cold, and the distance between husband and wife grew wider. One night, Vanessa found a receipt in Tyrone's glove box for a motel outside of town. It was dated during one of her overnight shifts. The name on the receipt was his. The signature, messy, rushed. That same week, she noticed a small blinking light on the baby monitor in the guest house, a light she didn't recognize. She hadn't set up that feature. She began digging, checking call logs, looking through drawers. She started watching her husband, not through the eyes of a wife, but through the eyes of someone searching for a lie. And she found one. Then another. Keira, meanwhile, had become quieter. She avoided Vanessa entirely. She stopped journaling. She locked her door. Her eyes, once bright with hope, now seemed dark and distant. Her behavior changed. She became forgetful, paranoid. She jumped at small noises. She started texting someone constantly, but always deleted the messages. The final red flag came when Keira didn't show up for work. She didn't come to make breakfast. She didn't respond to texts. Her room was empty, bed made, closet half-packed. Vanessa knocked, then pounded. No answer. And just like that, Keira Johnson was gone. When Keira didn't come back, no one expected what police would find. It was a Wednesday morning, early July, and the Georgia heat had already begun to press itself into the walls of the Sanders home. Breakfast was unusually quiet. Tyrone was pacing more than usual. The children were restless. Vanessa, bleary-eyed from her overnight shift, immediately noticed Keira's absence. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her texts showed as delivered, but never read. By mid-morning, she walked over to the guest house. The door was unlocked. Inside, the bed was perfectly made, too perfectly. The closet door was slightly ajar. A few hangers dangled without clothes. The dresser drawers were closed, but one had been emptied entirely. The air felt wrong, stale, like someone had left in a hurry or had been taken before they could finish packing. Vanessa called the sheriff's department by noon. The initial report was straightforward. Keira Johnson, age 19, missing. No family in the area. No car registered to her name. No known mental health issues. The first 24 hours were slow. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, asked around the church, even spoke with Keira's old supervisor at the diner she worked at before. Most described her as quiet, respectful, kept to herself. But when they questioned Tyrone Sanders, they found him unusually calm, cooperative, but careful. His answers were clipped. He said Keira must have met someone and left. Maybe she got homesick. Maybe she just needed space. But that explanation didn't sit right. By day 3, Keira's phone pinged its last signal. A rural tower near a wooded stretch outside Gray, Georgia, 30 minutes from the Sanders home. Near that tower, investigators found an abandoned cabin once used for hunting. The front door was padlocked, the windows covered. But inside, the faint smell of bleach, the remains of burned fabric, and in the fire pit behind the cabin, charred bits of clothing that matched the uniform Keira wore around the Sanders home. Still, there was no body, no proof of a crime, just suspicion. And then came the break. Keira had been texting one friend from her old job at the diner in the days leading up to her disappearance. Most of the messages were short, nervous. She'd written, "I think I made a mistake." Then, I can't tell Vanessa. She'll hate me. But the last message was chilling. It read, "If I don't make it out, ask about the cabin." That message was time-stamped just after midnight, hours before she vanished. Investigators turned their focus back on Tyrone Sanders. They obtained a warrant to search his electronics, and what they found on his laptop made stomachs turn. Among the recent browser history were searches like, "How to dissolve a body in lye," "How long does DNA last in fire," and "Can teeth survive a burn pit?" Tyrone denied everything, said it was a computer shared by the family, claimed the searches were spam, accidents. But Vanessa told a different story. In a quiet interview, she admitted that the laptop was password protected. Tyrone's password. She didn't know it. The children didn't either. And when she confronted him about the search history that morning, he had told her it was for a screenplay he was writing. He'd never written anything before. Then came the blood. Inside the trunk of Tyrone's SUV, cadaver dogs alerted to a strong scent. Forensics later confirmed traces of human blood in the vehicle's carpet lining. It matched Keira's DNA. Behind the passenger seat, more blood was found, small drops, almost wiped clean, as if someone had tried to sanitize the vehicle but missed a few critical places. The final piece was discovered inside the guest house. Hidden behind a loose panel in the wall near the closet was Keira's journal. Pages missing. Torn. But the entries that remained painted a portrait of a girl unraveling. One entry read, "I think he wants to leave her, but I don't trust him anymore." Another said, "I heard them fighting. She knows. She said I'm sick." And then there was this, written 2 days before she disappeared. "He said we could go away. He told me not to bring my phone. He said it's better if no one knows." Detectives knew then this wasn't just a missing person case. Something had happened to Keira Johnson, something violent, something premeditated. But the question that still haunted investigators, was Tyrone acting alone? Or had someone much closer, helped him cover it all up? It wasn't just the husband. Someone else knew, and they helped cover it up. From the very beginning, all eyes had been on Tyrone Sanders, the respected church deacon, the charming small business owner, the man who had been living a double life behind the stained glass and perfect family portraits. But as investigators pulled back the layers, a disturbing new thread began to emerge, one that pointed not just to a secret affair, but to a chilling collaboration. Vanessa Sanders had stood by her husband throughout the early days of the investigation. She held press conferences asking the public for help. She handed out flyers with Keira's face. She told reporters she just wanted her home. But behind that calm exterior, the truth was starting to crack through. Surveillance footage obtained from a nearby hardware store showed Vanessa, alone, purchasing several bottles of bleach, industrial cleaning gloves, and heavy-duty trash bags. The date was just 2 days after Keira's final text message. "If I don't make it out, ask about the cabin." At first, Vanessa told police it was for household cleaning. But investigators knew better. They had already recovered burned fabric fragments from the cabin that showed signs of accelerants, chemicals often found in industrial bleach. Then came the cell tower data. On the night Keira disappeared, Tyrone's phone pinged twice off a tower near the same wooded cabin where the burned clothing had been found. That alone wasn't enough. But Vanessa's phone pinged too, at nearly the same time. Her explanation? She said Tyrone must have borrowed her phone. She claimed she'd been home, asleep. But investigators found no outgoing activity from her phone. No texts, no calls, no location changes, except that one ping. And it didn't stop there. A forensic sweep of Vanessa's vehicle revealed microscopic traces of blood in the carpeted trunk. Blood later confirmed to match Keira's DNA. The car had been professionally cleaned the next day. A rush job, paid for in cash. And in the glove compartment, an empty case of disposable gloves. But the most damning piece of evidence came from a deleted message. One that had been scrubbed from Tyrone's encrypted messaging app, but recovered through a digital forensic process. It was short. Sent from Vanessa to Tyrone. It read, "If she tells anyone, she'll ruin everything. I'll handle it." The message was dated the same night Keira vanished. Now the narrative was shifting. This wasn't a story of a husband seducing the nanny and murdering her when things got out of hand. This was something far colder, far more coordinated. Vanessa knew. And not only did she know, she acted. In earlier interviews, Vanessa had claimed she found out about the affair days after Keira's disappearance. But that timeline began to crumble. Investigators spoke with a former co-worker of Vanessa's at the hospital, someone who recalled Vanessa showing up to work visibly distraught nearly 3 weeks before Keira vanished. When asked what was wrong, Vanessa had allegedly said, "I think my husband is sleeping with the girl in our house and I don't know what to do." 3 weeks, not 3 days. And the evidence only grew from there. Receipts placed both Tyrone and Vanessa in the same town as the cabin days before the murder, together. Vanessa's credit card had been used to buy firewood, rubber boots, and plastic sheeting from a rural supply store less than 2 miles from the site. In the Sanders home, hidden behind a false panel in the laundry room, officers discovered an old storage bin filled with documents. Among them was a spiral-bound notebook. Inside were scribbled phrases in Vanessa's handwriting, frantic, angry, and dark. One page read, "She lied. She wants to steal my family. She has to go before she takes everything." By now, detectives had little doubt. Vanessa Sanders wasn't an innocent bystander. She wasn't a betrayed wife trying to hold her world together. She was part of it. The cover-up, the cleanup, possibly even the act itself. And for Keira Johnson, that meant there had never been a safe corner in that house. No one looking out for her. No chance of escape. Only secrets. And the people who would kill to protect them. 2 people walk into court. Only one admits what really happened. It was nearly a year after Keira Johnson's disappearance when the courtroom filled with reporters, church members, curious neighbors, and the few remaining people who still believed either Tyrone or Vanessa Sanders could be innocent. The trial took place in a mid-sized Georgia courthouse. Simple walls, aging wooden benches, and a silence that hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about truth. Tyrone Sanders, once a beloved figure in the community, now sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his wrists cuffed, his face thinner than before. Vanessa sat behind him, no longer a wife, but a co-defendant. Her expression unreadable. From the beginning, the prosecution painted a chilling picture. A vulnerable teenager manipulated by a man twice her age, drawn into a secret affair that became fatal the moment she tried to leave it behind. The evidence was damning. Text messages, internet searches, DNA traces, the cabin, the cleaning supplies. But it was Keira's words that echoed loudest. Weeks into the trial, detectives uncovered a final journal, the one she'd hidden away in a rented storage locker 2 towns over. She must have suspected someone was reading her diary in the guest house, maybe even feared it. So she moved her truth elsewhere. In that notebook, investigators found a heartbreaking entry, dated 2 days before she vanished. "I don't trust him anymore. He scares me. I told him I was done. I told him I'd tell Vanessa everything. I think he believed me." Another page, scribbled in hurried pen, read, "She won't look me in the eye anymore. I think she knows. I think she's angry. But it's not my fault. I want out." Those words, so simple, so raw, told a story no lawyer could twist. On the stand, Tyrone maintained his innocence for days. He blamed Vanessa. Said she had snapped. Said she confronted Keira in a rage and that he had only helped clean up the mess to protect their family. But Vanessa denied it all. Said she had no idea what Tyrone had done. Claimed he had acted alone. That she was asleep when Keira disappeared. That she never went to the cabin. That her phone must have pinged there by mistake. It was a war of silence and accusation. One spouse trying to bury the other. But then, on the final day of testimony, Tyrone broke. Under cross-examination after nearly 6 hours of pressure, he said the words no one expected. He leaned into the microphone, voice low and trembling, and said, "She said she was going to tell my wife. She said she was going to ruin everything. I begged her not to. I told her we'd figure it out, but she said she'd already written it all down, that she had proof. I don't know what came over me. I just snapped." The courtroom fell still. Vanessa stared ahead, her eyes glassy. Tyrone admitted to taking Keira to the cabin. He admitted to arguing with her, to shaking her, to striking her head on the edge of a metal sink. He claimed it was an accident, but admitted that afterward he panicked. Called Vanessa, told her what had happened, said she helped him clean the car, said she brought the bleach. But Vanessa refused to confess to anything. Without direct evidence tying her to the act, without fingerprints on the weapon, without a confession, without a witness, the jury was bound by law. Tyrone Sanders was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Vanessa Sanders walked free. The official reason? Insufficient evidence. The unofficial one? She played the part well. Too well. She never cried on camera, never shouted in court, never broke. To this day, Vanessa has never admitted to knowing anything. She returned to work 6 months later, changed her last name, moved to another state. Keira Johnson was buried in a modest cemetery back in Fort Payne. No family came. Only 2 former co-workers from the diner. A small headstone reads, Keira Lynn Johnson, 2004-2023. Loved, lost, never forgotten. But in the minds of everyone who followed this case, one question will never stop echoing. How many people knew she wouldn't make it out alive, and did nothing to stop it? 3 people knew the truth. Only 1 paid for it. Years passed. Tyrone Sanders remained behind bars, serving life without parole. His name faded from headlines, and so did the story of Keira Johnson. In the eyes of the public, justice had been served, or at least justice had taken the form it could. But in the shadows of that outcome, something strange lingered. A former inmate at the county facility, an older man who'd served time for a nonviolent charge, came forward during a parole hearing. When asked about Tyrone, he shrugged, said the man kept to himself, said he read scripture, avoided conflict. But then the inmate said something else, something no one could verify, yet no one could ignore. Every year, on the anniversary of Keira's death, Vanessa Sanders, no longer Vanessa Sanders by name, but still the same woman in the eyes of the law, visited a quiet cemetery in Fort Payne, Alabama, alone. She came early in the morning, never stayed long. She brought a single red rose and a folded note, handwritten, left under a stone beside Keira's modest headstone. One year, a groundskeeper, curious and unsettled by her annual silence, peeked at the note before the wind took it. It said only this: "Forgive me. I should have stopped him." She had never admitted guilt, not in court, not to the press, not to friends or family. But those 6 words said everything the trial could not. They hinted at a conscience trapped in a cage far deeper than the one her husband lived in. So, what does that make her? Was Vanessa Sanders just a bystander, frozen by betrayal and too afraid to speak? Or was she something much darker? A partner in silence, a keeper of secrets, a woman who let a girl die because she saw her not as a person, but as a problem. And perhaps the most haunting question of all, the one that lingers long after the case file is closed, long after the headlines are gone. If Keira Johnson had been 10 years older, if she had power, money, or status, would anyone have believed her before it was too late? Would she have survived? Or was she always doomed the moment she stepped into that perfect-looking house wearing borrowed clothes, holding on to nothing but hope? Keira Johnson was young, scared, and alone in a house full of secrets. In the end, she was silenced by the very people who said they'd protect her. She entered the Sanders home looking for safety, maybe even for a kind of family. What she found instead was a man who used his authority to break down her walls, to manipulate her emotions, to blur the lines between protection and possession. and a woman who, instead of opening her arms, looked the other way, or worse, made sure her silence stayed permanent. This wasn't just about one affair gone wrong. This was about power, about how easily trust can be twisted into control, about what happens when young women, especially those with no one else to turn to, find themselves trapped in the spaces between other people's secrets. Keira didn't stand a chance. She didn't have the years. She didn't have the voice. And when she finally tried to speak, no one wanted to listen until it was too late. But she wasn't just a victim of Tyrone Sanders. She was failed by everyone who saw the signs and stayed silent. Everyone who believed appearances over instincts. Everyone who chose comfort over confrontation. The truth is, there are countless Keiras out there right now, invisible, unheard, in danger, living in rooms they were told were safe, being silenced in ways the world refuses to see. So we have to ask ourselves, how many more? How many more Keiras will disappear before we start believing them the first time they say, "I don't feel safe"? How many more houses will hide their pain behind polished floors and perfect smiles? And how many more truths will die with the girls too afraid or too late to tell them? What do you think really happened that night? Was justice truly served? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more real-life true crime stories that will keep you up at night, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, the most terrifying stories are the ones that happen just down the street.